How I Met Your Mother is a show that hasn't aged the best, as we all know. It has a lot of very flawed characters, a lot of troubling behavior from most of the characters, and a lot of problematic jokes that just aged very poorly. But at the core of it, this show is a story about a group of friends and the experiences that they go through. And it's also a show about a man who's looking back on his life and who's reflecting on his life and sharing his life experiences with his kids and all the things that he's learned along the way. So while I think that there are many aspects of the show that have not aged well, I think that at the core of it, there are some moments that stick. And I think they will continue to stick because they're universal. So the gang has this tradition of watching Super Bowl Sunday together, and this year, unfortunately, one of the bartenders at McLaren's, Mark, passes away, and his wake is the same day and time as Super Bowl Sunday. The gang feels like they're obliged to go, but they don't want to miss their tradition, so they decide that they're going to record the game and watch it all together on Monday. And in the meantime, they will do their best to avoid finding out the score, which is especially difficult for Robin, who's a news reporter. So throughout the entire episode, we see how all the people, except for Barney, try their best to avoid finding out the score. And unfortunately, by the very end, when they're all sitting down ready to watch the game, practically everybody knows the score, except for Ted, and then Barney very promptly ruins it for him as well. And so they're sitting there and they're feeling very defeated because now they know the score and there's no point to watching the game anymore. And then Lily says, well, the commercials are still good because she likes watching the commercials. And then the rest of the gang notices that, well, the wings are still good, the beer still works. So they decide to put on the game anyway. Years later, as Ted is sitting down telling the story to his kids, he says that he doesn't even remember who won. He doesn't remember who was playing the game, but he remembers sitting down with his friends, eating wings, drinking beer, and having an amazing time. And Ted says that even if you know how a story is going to end, it doesn't mean that it ruins the experience for you, because it's not always about the ending. A lot of the time, it is all about the middle. It's about the journey that gets you there. And the best moments happen not because of something incredible that happens in the end, but of all the magical things that happen in the middle.
Because sometimes, even if you know how something's going to end, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the ride.
And in a weird way, I think it almost kind of applies to this show. I know that this show was ruined for many people because of the ending, which is perfectly valid. But in some ways, we can focus on the center of the show and forget about the ending, because the ending is not the part that ultimately matters. It's what happens in the middle that truly counts. So Lily is in a play because one of her friends asked her to participate, and she invites the rest of the gang to watch her in this play. Barney has a very negative reaction, and he says that friends don't let friends watch crappy plays. Barney's philosophy is that there are some things that you should not make your friends do.
Asking someone to come see your play is like asking someone for a ride to the airport, or to crash on your couch, or to help you move.
Lily's very upset by this because she wants her friends there as support or to see that she's participating in this project. And so everybody attends this play. Barney also begrudgingly attends this play, and it is quite awful based on how the gang reacts. And at the end of it, the entire gang is congratulating her, saying that it was so interesting and wonderful, and Barney tells her that it sucks. So Lily is upset about this, and Barney says that he's just being honest and that that's what a good friend does. They're honest with each other and they tell someone whether or not something's crappy. And Lily's response is that a good friend is there to be kind and compassionate and supportive.
Friends make each other feel good. They build each other up and support them. That's what being a good friend is about.
So, as revenge, or to prove his point, Barney decides to put on his own one-man show, and he invites the gang. And this whole show is like 3 hours and is designed to purely irritate Lily. Lily, in order to defend her position, attends this play, and she puts up with it for about an hour and a half. And during this entire time, Barney's just saying the word moist over and over again to annoy her. He's just spraying her down with water, and he's doing everything to be obnoxious. About halfway through, Lily says, "All right, you win, Barney. I give up. I don't have to watch your play. You're right. I'm never going to invite you to another play again. And so you win." And this is where we see Barney's expression change, and we see that he was actually excited for the possibility of them watching his play. He starts saying that the second act of his play gets even better, that the robot falls in love, and we see that he actually wants them to keep watching this play. Lily notices Barney's reaction, and she then decides to stay. She convinces the rest of the gang, even though they don't want to, but her philosophy is that friends hold each other up and friends support each other. And so, due to Lily's insistence, the gang watches the rest of the play. So there's a lot to unpack in this B plot, but what I really liked about it is that ultimately, at the end of the day, people want to feel seen and people want to feel supported. I think that sometimes we don't truly know how much it means to someone else for them to feel like they're being supported, that they put an effort into something and they feel very validated that their efforts are being seen. And there is a place and time for harsh truths or criticisms. And in this particular scenario, Lily wasn't looking for that because this play wasn't her profession. And so if a friend writes a book or makes a movie or makes a YouTube video or participates in a play, it might mean a tremendous amount that someone is there for them just to applaud and say, great job, because sometimes that's all a person really needs. Barney and Robin start dating and they have a perfect honeymoon phase where they never fight. Ted questions the fact that they never fight, and apparently Barney and Robin came up with inventive ways of avoiding fights. They basically get away from the fight. So Robin undresses and Barney just leaves. But one day they're no longer able to avoid it, and so they start fighting all the time. All the fights that they've avoided start to come to the surface. In the meantime, Barney has instigated a fight between Marshall and Lily about dishes. Lily always asks Marshall to wash the dishes, and one day Marshall decides that he's not going to, based on Barney's advice. So then Marshall and Lily start fighting all the time, and it escalates into a whole bunch of fights. Then Barney and Robin come to Marshall and Lily for advice because they're the quintessential couple in their friend group, and they ask for help. And this is where Barney and Robin see very quickly how Marshall and Lily put their fight aside. Marshall and Lily make up really fast. They decide they're going to set the dish issue aside. Lily says she doesn't care if Marshall washes the dishes. Marshall says that he's going to wash the dishes all the time. And Barney and Robin ask, how do they do this? How are they able to resolve their problems so quickly? And this is where Marshall and Lily explain that sometimes you just have to put your ego aside and recognize that the love that you have for each other is so much greater than the love that you have for winning. What I like about this episode is that it kind of brings up the typical things that happen in relationships on a very broad scale. Of course, it's a 20-minute episode, but it kind of shows how one fight can escalate into many fights. And the couples that make it are the ones who are willing to apologize and to say that they're wrong, or to put an issue to the side, and to especially put their ego to the side, because that's the most important thing. And I think this happens in all kinds of relationships, to recognize that the fact that this other person is in your life is so much more important than winning or your ego or being right in the particular moment. Marshall and Lily also say that the best stuff or the real stuff in a relationship actually happens after the honeymoon phase, because that's when you can actually be honest with each other and you can actually resolve issues and talk about things and be very open with each other. Robin starts working for Worldwide News, and unfortunately her previous co-anchor, Sandy Rivers, is her boss, and Sandy starts making fun of her, and then the entire office starts making fun of her. Ted and the gang tell her that she should steer into the skid. So in other words, when you're driving through snow and you start sliding, the safest thing to do for the situation is to steer into it to prevent further damage. And so they say that she should just play along with the jokes because they're ultimately harmless and it might quell the situation. Robin doesn't really want to do this. She's very upset. And then it gets even worse. So Sandy digs up every embarrassing thing she's ever done on camera, and there's a lot. So Ted, playing the big hero that he is, decides to go to Sandy Rivers' apartment, and then he takes a photo of Sandy without his toupee. And this photo then gives Robin ammunition to blackmail Sandy Rivers. But ultimately, she decides not to do it. She shows up at work, and even though she wants to blackmail him, she decides to be the bigger person. and she decides to just laugh along with the jokes. Now, this episode is not necessarily the best example of steering into the skid, but I think it has elements that still hold up. And this episode made me think about The Devil Wears Prada, which I think is a much stronger example of steering into the skid. For anyone who's not familiar with the movie, I recommend watching it, it's great. But if you have not seen the film is about Andy, who is an aspiring journalist, and she starts working for a fashion magazine. Unfortunately for Andy, she hates fashion, she doesn't understand it, and she thinks the job is below her. So in the beginning, Andy's not doing so well because she's not dressing the part, she gets criticized a lot, she gets made fun of, she doesn't like the work that she's doing. One day, Andy has a conversation with Stanley Tucci's character who works at the fashion magazine, and she realizes that because she's already stuck at this magazine, that's her situation, she has to make the best of it. So she starts dressing better, she starts working harder, she starts doing her job really well, and this allows her to progress. Ultimately, I don't think that neither Andy or Robin are the ideal example. Andy ends up being consumed by this industry until she walks away, and Robin turns into one of the villains. When someone does something embarrassing, she also starts to laugh at them. But her initial behavior, her decision not to blackmail Sandy, and her decision to laugh along with the humor kind of makes her the bigger person. Life throws a lot of things our way and we can't control all of them, and sometimes we are just stuck in a position that we're in. And the best thing that we could do is just make the best of it. Especially when it comes to humor, I do see this a lot on YouTube where people get made fun of all the time, and some people are able to turn that around and make jokes at their own expense, but in a way that feels harmless. Again, there are some jokes that are completely inappropriate and should not be tolerated, but in Robin's case, she was being the bigger person. In one of the saddest episodes of How I Met Your Mother, Marshall's father passes away. Before the funeral, Marshall's family is deciding what they should talk about for their speeches, and the family decides that they should focus on last words. And so, the entire episode, Marshall is wrecking his brain at trying to remember what were the last things that his father said to him. And naturally, during this episode, Marshall is completely falling apart. He's very upset that he can't remember it, and when he remembers the lines, he's very upset at the fact that his words, or the words that his father told him, are not as meaningful as the words that his father told his other siblings. At the end of the episode, Marshall finds that his father left him a voicemail, and in that voicemail, one of his last words was,
"I love you."
And then some things that Marshall would prefer not to remember.
And let me know if you find my foot cream. That fungus thing is acting up again.
While the episode does focus on last words, I don't perceive it to be the main message. I think the message is that we don't always know when we're saying goodbye. The day that Marshall's father left New York was the last day that Marshall was ever going to see him, and neither one of them knew. And the point is not about the last words that his father said. Ultimately, it's about the last feeling that you have with the person. And you don't know what your last words are going to be. And you don't know when the last time will be that you see someone. So when it comes to the people that you really care about, it's important to make it count. So those are the few lessons that kind of stuck out to me when I rewatched the show. I'm sure there's a ton more. There's one lesson that keeps coming up over and over again, which I was going to add into this video, but I think it's a little more complicated, or it's a lesson that the gang has to keep learning. So maybe I'll devote it to another time. But if you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.